Hello, powerful souls. It looks like my microphone is working, and I don't know who's here yet. This is my very first go live, and I'm super excited to talk to you, to connect with you. I'm going to begin doing these on a day that I call Wake Up Wednesday. And this is just another way to allow people to connect, to come together, people who are like minded, who are on their awakening journey. And maybe you have some spiritual questions that you would love to ask. So it's been an interesting journey on this channel. My name is Laurie Majka. If you don't know me, and you're probably surprised at the pronunciation of my name, I know it doesn't look like it should be said that way, but it is Majka. And I am super excited to be here doing this work. And this channel has been a labor of love for me. I don't think people really understand what goes into these channels and putting all of this together. There's so much work that happens behind the scenes that you don't ever see and that you're just not aware of. And I do not do this full time. This is my part-time gig. Oh, my puppy. This is my girl Blaze. She is almost 10 months old. She just finished eating, so she's probably going to have to go outside. But she's my good girl, my puppy. So super blessed to have this unconditional love in my life. So this channel has been such a labor of love, and I was talking about how much goes into this that you're probably not aware of. So scheduling has to happen for all of the interviews, the follow-ups, the Zoom, the subscriptions to editing software, the understanding of optimizing videos, posting, editing shorts. I mean, it just doesn't end. What's been really surprising in the last year is how much the channel has grown and how much the comments have taken off. I feel like the comments are an entity in and of themselves. When I first started doing this, I read every single comment, I answered every single comment, and I really participated in them. And as the channel has continued to grow and grow and grow, I've found that as some of these videos take off and go to 50,000 people in a matter of a week, the comments are overwhelming. I mean, a lot of times these videos will have over 500 comments, 700 comments, 1,000 comments, and my comments count. But what is so cool about this is that there's a community that has been forming here on this channel, and people are interacting with each other. I see a lot of regulars on the channel. I still spend probably 4, maybe 5 hours a week in the comments. Okay, I'm going to have to pause for 1 second while my dog goes outside. This is the craziness of going live. I knew this was going to happen. So the comments have been super overwhelming lately. And I not only cannot read them all anymore, but I absolutely do not have time to answer them all anymore. Like I said, this is my part-time gig. I probably put about 35 hours a week into this channel. And I have a full-time corporate job. I work in technology. I've worked for companies like IBM and Hewlett Packard, and I do a tech job, which is my day job. And it's a lot to try and interview. I usually have about 5 interviews scheduled on my calendar per week. They don't always stick, but for the most part, I am interviewing that many people. I do usually try and take off a couple of months in the summer where I only edit and I don't interview. So I do stack up some of those interviews so that I can have some downtime, because it's a 45-hour regular corporate job and at least 35 hours a week working on this channel. So it doesn't leave a lot of free time. One of the main things I do every day for my sanity check is I've got to be in nature. So I spend a lot of time hiking every day in the morning before I start my work day, so that I can just be in nature and exercise and just feel strong and stay healthy. So the channel is an evolution, and I am just so tickled to see how much this has grown. We're at 1.4 million views on this channel, and I appreciate every single subscription. I appreciate every single view. I appreciate every single comment, good or bad, positive or negative, because a comment shows YouTube that there's engagement. And when there's engagement, then more people get a recommendation for that video and it can go further and can reach more people. And that has always been the intention of this channel. So I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to share a little bit about the journey on this channel, because I'm sure a lot of you have no idea how something like this gets started. Here I am many years after my very first post, but a long time ago, I was in the shower and I had this epiphany, a download, I called it at the time, where all of a sudden, in a matter of a second, I saw an entire idea. And this idea was that our thoughts were super powerful and that most people have thoughts that run away and control them, and they hold on to thoughts that no longer serve them. So I became really interested in trying to create a message, a mantra around thoughts and a thought changing process, and how I could help people to have a more fulfilling life if they could change their thoughts into something that better served them, if they could let go of thoughts that no longer serve them. And ultimately, it was a labor of trying to help people to understand that they needed to love themselves and be kind to themselves in their thoughts. And so I created a video and I posted it, and it got a couple hundred views. I think maybe 585 views in the first month or so. And this was when YouTube was fairly new. I think this was probably 2019, 2018, sometime around there. And I posted it and I didn't really do very much with my channel after that. And then on the winter solstice of 2020, I did a medicine journey. If you've been on my channel for a while, you've heard me talk about some of these journeys that I've done. My primary mediator is 5-MeO-DMT. It's the most powerful psychedelic on the planet. What it does, they think, scientifically, is in the pineal gland, you produce DMT. And when DMT is released, they think that that's the mechanism that allows the soul to come in or go out of the body. So when the soul leaves the body, when you die, DMT is released. That's actually clinically studied. I recently had a guest, Dr. Scott Robinson, who talked about he had a measurement of his DMT in his system when he had his near-death experience. Dr. Rick Straussman has wrote a whole book about DMT called The God Molecule. And in any case, I studied this substance for a long time and I felt very drawn to it. And I had my first experience back in 2017, and it changed my life. It really changed my life, because for the first time, I understood on a level that nobody could take away from me. That was not something that I read about. It was an actual experience. And that experience showed me that we were much more than the body, that we were a soul with a power beyond anything I could have imagined. I think the first time I experienced my soul outside of my human body, when I had that experience, I think if I had been thinking about the power of God, that was what I would have assigned to God. But it wasn't. It was the power of my higher self and my soul. In any case, on the winter solstice of 2020, and these synchronistic dates definitely have something to do with spiritual awakenings, spiritual deepenings, spiritual connection. And that happened to be a very powerful solstice for me. And I had an incredible experience. And I've talked about it on a couple of other podcasts. And if you want to hear the full detail of that, in my playlist, I have a section called Interviews with Laurie. And I was on the Jeff Mara podcast. I was on Love Covered Life with Mel. And I talked about that experience. But what was really cool, maybe equal to the experience, was the next day I got a download, which ultimately became an outline that turned into a series of videos that I recorded back in probably 2019 called Uncover Your Soul's Purpose, What You Don't Know Is Holding You Back, No Meditation Required. And they were modules that had videos in kind of a grouping that would help people to understand and change their perceptions so that ultimately they could change their thoughts. They could become more in love with themselves, which actually evolves the entire collective. And I mean that as the entire human species, as we all recognize that we are a spark of the divine, and we understand that our divinity is something that is our birthright, and that there's nothing that we need to change about ourselves, that we are perfect and whole and our lives are unfolding perfectly, and that our lives are happening for us and not to us. We become happier, more joyful, more grateful, more connected, more grounded, more in touch with the human experience. This is what we're here to have. So I created this series of videos. And at the time, I was working a corporate job and I had been laid off. And I decided I wanted to try and take a stab at creating a spiritual business instead of a corporate business. And so I wanted to create these videos and sell them as a module that people could use to help in their spiritual awakening so that they could wake up. And I built a sales funnel, and I spent a lot of money on the sales funnel and the advertising to get people there. Spent probably about $6,000 on these videos. And because of the amount of money that I had to do for the advertising to get people to find them, it made me set a price point that I was completely uncomfortable with. And as a result, I did not sell any of them, which was, of course, divinely orchestrated, in my opinion, because I feel that this whole series of videos was meant to be given away to people so that they could begin to help themselves on their journey to awakening, to understand that they pick their life, they pick their parents, they pick the body, they pick the situation that they would want to come here to experience. Not to learn and grow, as I have said in the past. I feel now, as I've had more and more of these experiences, more and more conversations, spirituality always ebbs and flows and changes and evolves over time. But I really and truly feel that we are here for an experience, that we are God, not a child of God, not a descendant of God, but we are literally, in every sense of that word, God, meaning a veiled experience that you think of as you, and I think of as Laurie, having this human incarnation for the joy of the experience. So after I didn't sell any of these videos, I decided to release them for free on my channel. And so I only at the time had a couple of NDE interviews that I had done, like with my sister and a friend that I knew, and my friend Kristen, who I've had on the show a few times. And then I began releasing these videos one at a time. And YouTube was still pretty underdeveloped. And because I had videos of a lot of different types on my channel, I had also created a few small videos around my Soul Heart Art artwork. I think YouTube was really confused about what I was, what I wanted to be, who to serve my videos to. And so it just grew super, super slowly. It took me probably a year and a half before I had enough people to become monetized. And what that means on YouTube is that when you have enough engagement, enough view time, enough subscribers, YouTube, instead of taking the money for the ads that they put on each and every video, whether you're monetized or not, they're making money. They will actually give you a percentage of that money instead of taking it all for themselves. And so that's sometimes the goal for some people. I don't put extra ads. I haven't had any sponsorships, and I don't have any control over how the ads are played within YouTube. They just play on my channel. I'm on it. It's checked to monetize and off to the races. I personally don't like to watch ads on YouTube, so I have YouTube Premium. I should get some compensation for as much as I've talked about YouTube Premium, as people have said things in the comments about not liking the ads that are on the channel, but like I said, don't have control over that. So after I ran out of the 63 videos, my channel was starting to grow, and I decided I wanted to try to get more interviews for near-death experiencers because I had been fascinated. I think when I started interviewing people for NDEs, I had probably watched, read, and listened to well over 1,500 of these NDEs. I don't have any idea how many NDEs I've listened to by this time in my journey, but probably approaching 4,000 of them, because it is something that I was using for a long time to help me and my own spiritual journey to understand more before I started having my journeys on the other side. But the NDE that I became most obsessed with were life reviews. And I was really lucky in the very beginning to find a few people who had had these incredible life reviews. And the reason that I was obsessed with the life review portion of the near-death experience is because I feel like it is the best example of a concept that I've talked about in my Uncover Your Soul's Purpose videos and in conversations for many years. And that is that we are all one. We are connected. And what we do to another in the most literal sense, I believe we do to ourselves. And when we understand this, we show up better. We are kinder to other people because we've put ourselves into the golden rule. We've put ourselves into the do unto others as you would have done unto you. We've put ourselves into somebody else's shoes. We're walking their journey because we understand that the impact and the ripple effect that we have on another is being done to ourselves. And this is shown over and over again in these life reviews, where somebody goes to the other side and they have a life review in many, many different forms and fashions. Sometimes these life reviews are on a big panoramic screen. Sometimes these life reviews are done with another entity like an angel, a spirit guide, Jesus, God, a passed away loved one. And sometimes these are done in a white room with a table that has like a viewer that you would almost go into or become. I've had near-death experiencers who have had life reviews where it's like a stage and it's almost like actors coming on the stage to perform scenes that they become a part of. I've had life reviews where people were just experiencing them as little teeny tiny bubbles that they were grabbing and then becoming that portion, that moment in their life as they were re-experiencing it. But the one that really, really touched me early on was Jeremiah Pospisil. And I've interviewed him. We've done some collaborative conversations on this channel over time, but he had had 3 near-death experiences and 3 life reviews. But his first life review, when he had a car accident and his car rolled multiple times, he was dead on impact, and he went to the other side and had this life review. And he explained that he was growing up very poor in a bad area of Los Angeles. He was about 13 years old, and he said that he had to be tough in that environment because if you weren't, people would pick on you. And so he was just walking outside after school one day, and he saw a kid who seemed to have weakness in him. And he decided, for whatever reason, to beat the heck out of this kid. And in his life review, he experiences this event as him singling this kid out, jumping on top of this kid and punching him. And he can feel all of the emotions. He can feel all of the chemical mediators running through his body, the dopamine, the adrenaline. And he is just full of rage, just beating this kid up. And then all of a sudden, he becomes the kid. And in this kid's body, he's feeling every single punch that's landing on his face, on his body. He feels the bewilderment that this kid was experiencing. And he feels the fear that this kid is going to have in having to go home and tell his parents that he had been beaten up because they lived in a dangerous neighborhood and his parents had already been worried about him. And then he also got insight into the parents, and he saw that in this single event, the parents were now, because of this beating up session, they're going to parent differently and they're going to hover over their kid and be more protective. And as a result, this kid is going to become more introverted by the way his parents parented him. He also saw that this kid had set up a list of experiences he wanted to have in this earthly incarnation. And because of this one incident of being beat up, this kid was also going to become personally less, or more introverted, less extroverted. And as a result of that, his personality was going to change. And therefore, he was not going to be able to check some of these experiences off of the list that he had brought with him into this human incarnation to have. And when Jeremiah came out of that experience, he saw that nobody was judging him for it. There was no entity judging him. God was not judging him, but he was judging himself because he knew that one of the goals in coming here to have an earthly incarnation was to see how you could show up in a state of love. And the reason I think that this state of love experience happens over and over again, as a matter of fact, I feel like the state of being of this blissful love, this euphoria that near-death experiencers have, is the, in my opinion, number one most common experience that people have in a near-death experience, is that experience of being this infinite love. And they'll describe it as a love unlike anything that they've ever experienced in their human body. And the reason that is, from my experience of being on the other side, is because when we leave the human body and we become our higher self, or we become the collective, or we become the source, God, universal consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that entity is in a state of being of love. Here, we are not in a state of being of love. Newsflash, it's not that loving here sometimes. But we do come here to experience what it is like to experience love. Because on the other side, when we are love, we can't experience love because we are love. So here we have this unique vantage point where we get to experience what it's like to love something, to love somebody, and to be loved by others. And I think the most important relationship that we have when we're here in this human body is the one that we have with ourselves, because we need to show up in a state of love to ourselves. We need to be in love with ourselves. And I don't mean that in a conceited way. I don't mean that in a narcissistic way. I mean that literally as this perfection that we are from the other side, veiled, to forget that we are love, to have an experience and see how we can show up in love. So I think one of the comments I see on my channel over and over again on videos is that people are very, very confused about the state of being that we are. They have a hard time embracing a statement that says you are God, you are love, because everybody can turn on the news and get 100 examples of us not being love, of us being war, of us being hateful, of us being murderous, of us being distrustful, dishonest, and hurting one another in very real serious ways. And I don't want to minimize any of those experiences because they are real and they're true. But if you pull it back to the perspective of your higher self, the perspective of the collective, the perspective of God, from that perspective, you are a state of being of love and your energy. And Einstein's E equals MC squared talks about energy and how energy could neither be created nor destroyed. Energy just is. So from the state of the higher perspective of your higher self, the collective from God, you can't be harmed. So when we come here, no matter the experience that somebody endures, whether somebody is tortured, murdered, molested, whatever the experience that you would give a negative connotation to, the soul cannot be harmed. I know that people live with trauma. I know that PTSD is absolutely real, and these experiences are beyond real, but we are actually here for the experience. And part of why I think we're here for the experience is to see if we can wake up, and no matter what experience we're given, can we show up in love? Can we show up in our natural state of being? Can we recognize that it's an experience, and every experience that every soul has, since it's just a drop of the collective, a drop of the source, all adds to the experience of the source experiencing itself. When source is in complete oneness on the other side, it's very difficult to see that which you are not. So, by having a human experience, we as the collective get to experience every facet, every joy, every happiness, every tragedy on an experience level for really the joy of that experience. And I know that that sometimes is very difficult for people to grasp and to embrace. So, one of the things I always say in the comments when I'm interacting with people and they're having a hard time with something that a near death experiencer or one of the guests has said is to just say, take in what resonates with you and leave behind what doesn't. You are such a powerful, magnificent soul. I wish if I could take a magic wand and for 5 seconds, you got to experience that blissful love that all these NDEers are talking about from their experience, that blissful love that I have personally experienced on the other side. I wish that I could let every single person have that experience for just 5 seconds. Just that 5 second amount of time experiencing that love would change your life because you can never unsee the power that we are once you have that experience. And so I do believe that this is a big reason why NDEs have gotten very popular, why there are so many channels now on YouTube who do them. When I started, the only channels that I really even knew about was Jeff Mara, and Love Covered Life was on here, Buddha at the Gas Pump. There were a few other Sandra. There were just like a handful, like maybe six. Lee did NDEs from Ions, just a podcast. It wasn't even a video, and there were hardly any. And when I first started watching NDEs on YouTube, Jeff Mara had like 6,000 followers. He had so few videos at the time that I was able to, in 2 weeks, watch every single video on his channel. And it has just grown. I remember when Alex came on the scene. I remember when Sylvia Isaacson was doing this and then she stopped. I remember when some of these NDE channels that now have hundreds of thousands of followers started posting these NDEs and just grew like wildfire. And I don't know why some channels grow faster than others. It's an interesting phenomenon, and it's also been fascinating to see every single channel like hammer in subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. I love the subscribers. I appreciate every single subscription. It definitely makes a difference on some guests booking to be on my show. I've had guests turn me down because they have said flat out, I do not have enough subscribers for them to waste their time coming on my show, which is interesting from spiritual people. I won't name any names. I had one woman who had one video that did very well on Next Level Soul, and she told me that she'd be happy to come on my show when I was regularly getting 10,000 views a video. But until then, she wasn't interested. But all that being said, I've never been about the subscriptions. Of course, I'm grateful when I have them. It seems to be more of an ego mechanism, more of a mechanism that YouTube looks at a little bit more closely. There's only one thing that I really care about on my channel, and that is that people watch the videos. So Watch time is the only metric that really makes me excited, because it means that people are engaging. It means that people are waking up to the power of who they are. It means that people are taking in new information. And when they do that, they're changing their perception. And when they change their perception, it will allow them to change and adopt some of these concepts that I've just talked about that help empower them to have a better, happier, more joyful life. So I'm not saying that life is perfect once you've been on a spiritual path, and once you've been on this other side, we still are human. Things happen. I had two things happen that just really were hard yesterday. Yesterday was a cluster for me, but I kept on saying it's all happening for me and not to me. And it didn't make me as mad about it as it would have maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, when I just would have been pissed because something happened that I didn't want to have to deal with. So it's been an incredible journey to bring this content to you. I really and truly feel like it's labor of love. I love the interactions with everybody. I am getting ready to start a private group. I have a great idea that I'm really excited about that I'll be sharing in the next couple of months. And I just really am excited about continuing to find guests who have extraordinary, unusual experiences. If you are one of the people listening to this who have had an incredible near death experience, even what you would say is an average near death experience, I would love to talk to you. I would love to have you come on the show and let you share your experience. The community is very kind, the community is very open. And when people hear these experiences, it opens them up. And you never know, by sharing your experience, who you will touch. The ripple effect that we have on this world is unknowable, but it's real. And every single time we do something to touch another person, we make a change in uh, the perspective of the collective, good or bad. So it's so important to share what we can share to help one another. I'm here to be in service. This is a big part of why I do this. And I'm just excited that I was able to have a few minutes with you today to talk a little bit about some of my beliefs, where I'm coming from. And I would love to have you join me on Wake Up Wednesdays. I'm going to start doing these. They will be at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And if you are looking for some content, maybe you're new to this channel, maybe you've been here for a while, I did curate 2 new playlists that I'm pretty excited about. As the channel has grown, I feel like it's almost overwhelming sometimes to figure out what should I watch. And I know that by default, people do go to the most popular, most viewed videos, which is great because they had attraction for a reason, but they're not always in my top videos of people who I thought were extraordinary, because I've done so many interviews. I'm approaching almost 400 of these NDEs, these near death experiences, STEs, spiritually transformative experiences, these OBEs, out of body experiences, and these miraculous healings that people have had. There are people who I've interviewed maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, that their video got hardly any traction at all because my channel was so new. And as more and more content is layered on top of those early videos, people don't often go back to them. So the 2 playlists I curated are: number 1 is my top most intriguing NDEs. I'm not putting a limit of the amount of videos that are in this category, but right now I have 28 of them. And then I am going to limit the next list, which is Laurie's top 10. And this will be a fluid, changing list because, of course, as I do more and more interviews, there are often some people that just stand out among the rest. And recently, in the month of December of 2025, I did have 2 videos that really stood out for me. One was Aaron Green. Aaron had an incredible near-death experience when he was 6 years old. He had an experience where he went to the other side. He had a life review, which was pretty impactful. He had conversations with God where he was asking, where did I originate from? He saw how he planned his life, what specific character traits he picked for himself so that he could have a very specific experience in this human incarnation. And his NDE was about 43 minutes long, which is super, super long for a near death experience. And I had just a ball talking to him and asking him questions. So we had an incredible conversation that I posted in December of 2025. I would recommend that one. It is in my top 10. And the other one is somebody who this channel really embraced, which was Gareth Diagnum. He is an Irish man who had very, very a lot, sorry, he had a lot of spiritually transformative experiences, STEs, and he had dabbled in astral travel. He had experiences with Tom Campbell. If you know him, he's a physicist who has talked a lot about the theory of everything. His book, My Big Toe, TOE, Theory of Everything. And he has some Kundalini awakening, and he regularly now does meditations, free meditations that people can join him in, where he just sends energy to people to help them heal. Because, like me, his channel is a labor of love. And after his experiences, he understands that we're here to serve and try to help the collective. So, those are my recommendations if you want a few videos to watch. Don't discount the older videos. It was interesting. I think it was last night I was looking and I was served up a video from another YouTube channel. And this video was somebody who I interviewed who had, his name was Tony. He was a doctor. He got struck by lightning. I thought it was an incredible NDE. I don't know how many views his video has, probably less than 3,000. And somehow it got like 600,000 on somebody else's channel. So I'll never understand how YouTube takes videos and they take off or they don't take off, because in my opinion, some of these videos are so incredible and worth watching, even when they have a small amount of views. But again, this is where you can check in with yourself, look at your heart space, follow your intuition. They'll never steer you in the wrong direction if you just sink in and listen to your heart. So thank you so much for every view, for every comment, and for what you are personally doing to wake up the collective, because we all know it is so needed. So until next Wake Up Wednesday, goodbye. Thank you for watching.